So the one thing that you can do to take your portraits to the next level is to get better at edges. What do I mean by edges? Let me explain by using a portrait painting from a master oil painter in John Singer Sargent. So this portrait of his in particular, I think, is a great example of the power of edges. I mean, you can take a look right here at this edge and how he has softened it and let the paint from the cloth bleed into the paint of the background and given that soft edge right here. It's just helping this whole area feel like it's going back into space and the light is being lost and the edges are getting blurred together. Even in the face here, there's a lot of wet into wet paint happening. Just take this yellow stroke, for instance. It goes up and then it shifts into a different color, more of an orange, and then goes straight and mixes right into that highlight. So in this one kind of continuous shape, the color changes from the yellow to the orange and then into the white of the highlight. Similar thing is happening here with the eyebrows, and you can see the darker, more dense part of the hair, and then it fades out and is more soft and bleeds into the paint of the skin for the outside edge. Edges are very important when it comes to painting hair of any kind, with the eyebrows, hair in the head, or the beard. Coming down to the beard, there's a lot of soft edges happening. We got this like light purple, we got this lighter value here, got another color there. Up here we have this warmer color that mixes right into this cooler color. And all these soft edges make it more powerful when you do use a hard edge, like being very bold with this stroke right here. Using soft edges with hair is a way that you're going to communicate hair without painting individual hairs. I mean, just look at this brushwork right here on the side of this reflected light, light coming from the shoulder, the cloth on the shoulder here coming up. And it looks like it's all done in, just a few brush strokes. And it's mixed in with some of the color of the beard, some of the color of this, a little bit of the skin tone color. It's all mixing in there. And you can see he wasn't afraid of having colors mix into other colors and have the edges blurred by that. Like, that's all happening right here. This is getting blurred a little bit into this is into this, into this, into this. And that creates a very strong, realistic effect. Another good example to point out is on the edge here where he chose to have this sharp edge right here. These are kind of soft, a little bit of paint from the cloth is going into the background, but keeping it strong right there, and just where he chose to have stronger edges, got a strong edge right there, another pretty strong edge right here. And this whole shadow part of the face, since there's a lack of light, a lot of the edges are lost. Nothing is really crisp or defined, which helps give that illusion of it being in the shadows. So I actually did a copy of this painting as a Patreon tutorial. It's pretty popular with my students, and a lot of them posted their paintings into the Facebook page. So I thought it'd be a good topic to make a YouTube video on. So if you want to check out this tutorial or the over 100 I think I have now on my Patreon page and be a part of the private Facebook group, the link to that is in the description below. All right, let's look at this painting. Now you can see when I contrast that with a student's of mine painting, the colors in here are great. The drawing is right on point, the colors are on point, the values are on point. It's a really good painting, but I think in order to push it to that next level, I would recommend that they start thinking more about edges. For example, the entire left edge of this is really crisp. I think they could have benefited a lot by softening some of these edges here. Also look in the face. They have great colors, great values, and it's good to break the face down into shapes, but I think they could have molded those shapes together more on the edges. We have just a little too many crisp edges like right there. This is very crisp, this right here. I think a lot of areas where the hair meets the skin, they could have softened the edge a little bit, so it's not a harsh line right where the hair meets the skin. Like over here as well, I think just kind of blending in some of that color all around here would have helped a lot. Also in the shadow here, these harsh shapes, I think they could have dialed the harshness of them back a little bit by just softening the edges. Also down here in the beard, we have this dark shape that is a little too crisp, and just bringing some of that paint out into the wet paint of the beard would have been really nice. Softening this edge over here, I think would have been really good too. Coming back to the Sargent paint, you can see how soft he left this edge here. All right, I'm gonna shift gears here for a second and just let you know that if you struggle with color mixing, I get a lot of people asking me about how to mix colors. I actually offer the color mixing video from my Foundations of Oil Painting course for free. So if you wanna check that out, the link to that is in the description below. All right, so how do we go about seeing or identifying edges? And it's actually more of not seeing the edges, actually. You know, being able to pick up where edges are lost. And honestly, the best way to get better at this is to paint from life, and not just portraits from life, anything from life, still lifes, landscapes, anything. Because the way the human eye works is a lot different than a camera or a photograph. When you take a photo, the image has been made for you and the edges have been defined. When you're looking at something, you can only focus on one thing at a time, and everything else kind of gets blurred or is faded and not quite in focus. And that makes it easier to know where to lose edges. It's also very helpful to squint your eyes when painting from life or from a photo. When you squint your eyes, it's gonna be clear where you can lose edges because you're not gonna be able to see them. Take this portrait photo for example. When I blur it, it's hard to tell exactly where the neck starts and where the hair starts, and to know where exactly to put the line of that neck. So when I paint that, I'm going to incorporate that into the painting. I'm gonna allow the paint from the hair and the neck to blend together while I'm painting to soften that edge and give the illusion of that part of the neck being lost into the darkness there. Now, I've found, for me personally, the way I work has a big effect on how I see and incorporate edges in my paintings. For a long time, I painted my portraits in a very safe and controlled way. I do a pretty detailed drawing, and then once I started painting, I painted very timidly because I was scared of losing that drawing. Like I wouldn't paint over the eyes that I had drawn out. And I was only thinking about the portrait in terms of sections, of, you know, whatever section I was working on at that time. It's like, oh, I'm working on the eye here, and then the nose, and then the mouth. Instead of thinking at first, at the beginning, as the head as a whole, and really understanding the form. Because when I was painting that way, I could still paint pretty good portraits, but I hit a plateau and I would see other painters like John Singer Sargent, or contemporary painters like Michael Shane Neal or Casey Childs, and I'd see their paintings and they had just such a different feel to them. And I could tell that the way I was working was not going to get me to that way of painting. It wasn't until I changed the way I worked, which changed the way I thought, that I felt like painting in that way was in my future. Now I'm nowhere near those guys now, but I can definitely see a path to get there. And a lot of that has to do with painting like you're a sculptor. So now I don't use such a detailed drawing when I start. I get some accurate measurements, but I'm not worried about preserving the drawing while I paint. And I stopped being scared of laying down big shapes and then working smaller shapes into those big shapes with wet into wet paint. And while I'm working wet into wet paint, I'm very conscious of the pressure I'm putting on the brush and how much I'm letting the paint on the brush work into the paint that's on the canvas. A lot of times I feel like I'm trying to see how long I can keep my brush on the canvas with each stroke and really trying to feel the form of what I'm painting. This is very important at the beginning stages of the painting. When I first started painting, like I'm wanting to work shapes into other shapes and colors into other colors and kind of blending the paint together on the canvas. A good way to describe it is when I start a portrait, it's very out of focus. And as I paint and add more and more shapes, I dial in the focus in the areas that I want. But now you can, jump back. Like a lot of times I'll come back with my brush and drag it across the edge to soften the edge. But I try and get as much wet into wet paint at the beginning work together as I can. But I do try and err on the side of having more soft edges than I need at the beginning, knowing that I can sharpen them up later. I'm also thinking about what I'm painting and the material of it, the texture of it. Hair is not a solid object. When you're painting a beard, it's not solid like wood. I'm thinking of it solid like wood in terms of the form and blocking it out. But when it comes time to translate what it's made out of, it's thousands of little hairs. And that's not a harsh surface. So I'm looking to soften a lot of edges there. And also having a variety of edges is just going to give you more options. Having softer edges is going to make the times that you use hard edges that much more powerful. So if you find that your portraits are looking blocky or cartoonish or rigid or stiff, check the edges. Look at your reference, squint your eyes, and see where you can't define the edge of something. All right, I hope you found this video helpful and that you can take what you've learned and implement it right away into your next portrait painting. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you have a question on oil painting, leave that question in the comment section. That's how I come up with ideas to make new videos. And if you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting.